for today. It is a tremendous Thursday. It's March 19th, 2015. This is a live broadcast. I'm Doug Hagmann in studio along with my son, fellow investigator, fellow researcher Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann Hagmann Report. I want to welcome everyone in tonight. Welcome you to our program. Thank you so much for deliberately listening to us, tuning us in. We are simulcast by the good graces of the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann at HagmannReport.com, the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. Got to spell it all out. We're, of course, we're on BTR. Also, home base on the internet, HagmannandHagmann.com. That's HagmannandHagmann.com. You got to spell that all out as well. And for the new listeners, we broadcast between 8 and 11 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for your patience with us, and as we try to update things online and elsewhere, we are up to date with our SoundCloud uploads, so you can get previous programs on SoundCloud. Last night was especially interesting in terms of our guests talking about a number of different things, from personal health issues to geopolitics. My goodness, we covered quite a ground there yesterday. So if you missed the show last night, definitely go back and listen to that. Just want to thank everyone. I got just a number of great. We get a number of great letters and cards today. Went to the post office, and it was just fantastic to see all the people writing in. And thank you so much for your kind words and for your support, for your prayers. We really appreciate that. And anyway, boy, we've got a lot of news to get into this evening. We look at the news in 3D. We look at all the angles, I like to say, and from that we look at really what is propelling the headlines. And of course, we've got a lot of interestingly dire headlines. Dire in the sense that they certainly are pointing toward a new world order, I think. And Joe and I were talking about this before the show. The recent headline on Drudge, I'm not sure if it's still on there, about Obama using UN tactics, or the UN to circumvent Israel. And that's something. Well, anyway, Joe, welcome to the studio. It's great. It's great to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be here. It's been a long, busy day for a number of reasons, but the news being one of them, going through the stories we were going to get into tonight. And we do have tons of news all across the spectrum of issues and things going on, issues and ideologies, I guess, from the Obama and Israel issues to special operations here in the U.S. to across the world, some of the military drills that are going on, some of the other administrative issues, this presidential administration and what they're doing, not only with the UN but also with Iran. Very troublesome there. Also, news from the Fed, the genetically modified mosquitoes. We have a whole lot to get into, biometric information.
It seems like we're getting hit from all sides, doesn't it? You really can't keep up with the headlines, and you can't keep up with what's really important. So we're going to try to distill this out for you. No guests tonight. It's going to be us and you at the kitchen table talking about important topics that affect all of us. So this is great. Open format. We'll be taking your calls after
halfway through the show.
Yeah, about halfway through. Yeah.
I want to give instructions, and I'll do it again before we take the calls. But Blog Talk Radio has changed when you call in, whether you're calling to listen or you're calling to talk, they've changed what they state at the beginning of the call. When you call in, it says you can now listen to your show. And they used to say, if you'd like to speak to the host, press 1. Otherwise, stay on the line and your show will be here shortly, or you can listen to your show shortly. Now they just say you can just hold on and your show will be coming up. And when Chance came on to describe his 777 pack the other day, he sent some emails saying, it's not giving me the option to be in queue. Well, the option's still the same. You just press 1.
Just press 1 to talk, right. One of the first things, it caught my attention today. Ken Timmerman is an author. He writes for Front Page Magazine, and back a couple of weeks ago, March 6th to be exact, he wrote an article on the front page called Hillary's War. And once again, he's a great writer, I think. And
Hillary's War, is that a war against transparency, a war against accountability, or?
I think it's a multifaceted war, but it's interesting what he writes. And he starts out by saying what short memories we have. Now, remember, this was written 3 weeks, or, well, let's see, it would be almost 3 weeks ago now, about 2 weeks and a few days. Anyway, he writes, just 3 weeks ago, gloating ISIS terrorists beheading 21 Egyptian Coptic Christians on the Libyan beach, the Catholic Church proclaimed them martyrs, okay? Now, former Virginia Republican Congressman Frank Wolf, now at Baylor University, called for the creation of a safe haven for Middle East Christians. And then the world moved on. The body of yet another beheaded Coptic Christian was found in Libya on Wednesday. Now, folks, again, this is the first week of March. He's writing this. But by then, the media had turned their gaze elsewhere, so the outrage was gone. If I can add in here, this is the problem that we're having today. We're being overloaded with headlines. We're being overloaded with stories, important stories. The beheading of the 21 Coptic Christians is something that we have to keep in the forefront, because that, I mean, it's significant, and that shows not just for the 21, but for the other 21,000, perhaps, or even 2.1 million that are headed for the same fate. But he writes, Hillary Clinton and her supporters in the national media are counting on our short memories to allow them to tout their successes as Secretary of State as they gild her chariot for a ride to the White House in 2016. And therein lies reason number one why Mrs. Clinton will do everything in her power to keep the public from seeing her email, at least an unsanitized version that would provide the full record of her tenure as Secretary of State. Now, remember, folks, that her email on a private server using a private email account doing Secretary of State business. He writes then, in quotes, we came, we saw, he died. Anyone remember that one? That was Hillary Clinton joking with a reporter just days after visiting Libya on October 18, 2011, when she was told that Gaddafi had just been killed. She immediately burst out into that famous cackle. But since she was not a Republican, writes Mr. Timmerman, Mrs. Clinton did not have to declare, I'm not a witch. Some good humor there. And interesting wording, too, whether he knows it or not. But
last night on the way home, I had the Fox News on satellite radio, and I guess it was Bill O'Reilly was on, and he was talking with some people about the administration and any of the accomplishments of the, what has the administration accomplished? If it set out to do anything, has it accomplished this? And what are Obama's accomplishments? They were talking about Dick Cheney and his recent comments, and in some interview he did, just tearing the president apart. And I was going to ask you, was this a foreign policy achievement? I mean, this wasn't one of the things talked about last night on that show.
Right.
They talked about his withdrawal of troops and little things, and not hitting on the withdrawal of troops equals what we have today, or with the way they did it, at least in the time we were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and with the amount of personnel. And we talked about this before. It started under Bush, obviously, and the horrible management started under Bush.
Right.
But it was worsened by this president, and we have now a situation where there was a terrorist attack in Tunisia in the heart of the capital yesterday, where a few militants dressed in army gear went and massacred a bunch of people inside and outside of a museum. mostly, or I think it was all foreign tourists who were killed.
Well, yeah. Well, let me
ISIS took credit for that.
Right, and well, perhaps the Secretary of State and the U.S. State Department, and of course the executive branch of the government, as well as the Western intelligence inside the United States. Well, all of the Western intelligence agencies are the creators of this Frankenstein and facilitators, and of course really responsible for what's going on in a large part, or at least the criminal cabal element therein. But anyway, continuing with what Mr. Timmerman wrote here. Hillary, referring to Hillary, she learned of Gaddafi's demise when her aide, Muslim Brotherhood Royal, Huma Abedin, or Huma Abedin, depending on which side of the Mississippi you're from, passed what appeared to be her personal BlackBerry to her boss. One can only wonder who sent that message to Ms. Abedin. Was it a government official who used an official email account? Or was it some nebulous informant? Perhaps the same one who convinced Mrs. Clinton on the night of Benghazi, the Benghazi attacks, that a shadowy video they wrongly claimed was made by an American right-winger. That was at fault when there was nary a trace of that information in the official reporting channels from the U.S. Embassy in Tripoli, the diplomatic outpost in Benghazi, the defense attaché in Tripoli, the CIA station chief, the CIA substation in Benghazi, or the State Department Operations Center. Writes Mr. Timmerman. Why can I say that? Because we have been repeatedly told that all the official reporting on the night of the Benghazi attacks had already been produced to multiple congressional committees. Now hold that thought, folks. Think about this, okay? I'm going to repeat that sentence. Because we have been told repeatedly that all the official reporting on the night of Benghazi attacks has already been produced to multiple congressional committees. That's why Media Matters and the Hillary media brigades continue to insist there's no story. It's all a hoax. Move on. And when I say it's all a hoax, I mean it's all a hoax. That, according to Media Matters. Let me drift over to Media Matters right now. If you've never heard of Media Matters, well, they're a Marxist organization, at least in my view, that, in fact, I got the book written, my goodness, it's an e-book, and I felt bad for even buying it. It was for 99 cents. It was called, or it is called, The Benghazi Hoax. It's only on Kindle, and it's a 99-cent download. But I had to get it for background, and it was written by David Brock. That's who it was. That's right. Another author, Avi Rabin Hoft of Media Matters. Let me go back to Mr. Timmerman's article here, because what we're seeing take place right now can be like a crime scene traced back to Hillary Clinton. And as an aside, maybe the good guys, and I use that expression, the undercover agents or operatives, intelligence officers in Benghazi, maybe they weren't wearing the colors of the day. You know what I'm talking about?
In police undercover work, the undercover police officers have a color of the day they use to make sure that a officer who is undercover can be identified by the other officers who are in uniform or detectives on scenes of crimes and for other reasons. And the color changes daily, and it's been protocol in the police force for a long time across the country.
Well, a lot of people don't know that. Yeah, it saves undercover cops when there were, especially like in places like New York City and Los Angeles. At the start of the beat in the morning, the patrol officers and really the entirety of all the officers
Yeah,
are told the color of the day.
Yep, they're briefed on it in their roll call.
Right. And if you're working undercover, you better be wearing the color of the day, or at least know the color of the day, preferably be wearing it so you don't, if you're involved in some sort of a shootout or something going down, you don't get shot by a cop. And but anyway, maybe that's what where the slip up was in Benghazi. I highly doubt it, but I thought that was just as an aside. I thought that was interesting. But anyway, and that's coming from me, not from Mr. Timmerman. Now, Mr. Timmerman continues. I believe the question of where the YouTube video is the culprit story originated lies at the. I'm sorry. I believe the question of where the YouTube video is the culprit story originated lies at the core of the Benghazi scandal. Now, I agree with that. I agree with him there, too. I've called it the original sin, which led to the original spin by Susan Rice and others, including Obama and, of course, Mrs. Clinton herself. Now, what prompted Mrs. Clinton to advance a story she knew was fiction and to think that she could get away with it? What real story was a fiction papering over? And folks, you know, since you've been tuning into this program, if you've been doing it on a regular basis, you know that we deconstructed the Benghazi attacks right after they happened, and my reports are on CanadaFreePress.com as well as our old website, HomelandSecurityUS.com. But anyway. In fact, I think I've written almost 4 dozen articles on Benghazi, the attacks in Benghazi, and how these were planned and laid out, and what caused them. But having said that, until now, writes Mr. Timmerman, again, I think this guy is a great writer. Although the State Department has said repeatedly that they have produced every document and communication Congress has requested in a timely manner, we still don't have any record whatsoever of why Mrs. Clinton gave the stand-down order to the Foreign Emergency Support Team. That's very true. An interagency rapid reaction force with a substantial special operations component that was created precisely to respond to the type of emergency that was taking place in Benghazi. And they're on call 24/7. We still don't know what instructions Mrs. Clinton gave to her subordinates in preparing the infamous talking points for Susan Rice that blamed the attacks on the YouTube video and claimed preposterously that they were a demonstration gone wild. Nor do we have any inkling of the communications between Mrs. Clinton and her ambassador, Chris Stevens, although Stevens' number 2 man, Gregory Hicks, testified that they were communicated directly. And to think about it, writes Mr. Timmerman, indeed, it would have been extraordinary if they had not. We don't know if she instructed him to head to Benghazi to circle the wagons with the CIA and the Turkish Consul General to tamp down the growing scandal over the Intisar, a Libyan fishing boat carrying 400 tons of weapons sent by jihadi groups in Benghazi to the Syrian rebels, whose presence in the Turkish port had attracted the attention of Western reporters. See, the El Intisar was a Libyan fishing boat that left. That was one of a number of that, but this one was actually identified and caught carrying 400 tons of weapons. These weapons were destined to anti-Assad rebels. And everything that Mr. Timmerman is talking about here, writing about, and we're talking about, is relevant today, and it's relevant to many things, including but not limited to Hillary Clinton's run for the 2016 president, or her involvement in the 2016 race. And I do believe that she will run. That's just my personal opinion. There are a few things out there that seem kind of interesting that perhaps, anyway, I just want to continue with Mr. Timmerman here. We should have had answers to all of the questions within 3 months of the attacks, writes Mr. Timmerman, when the Hillary-appointed Accountability Review Board delivered its definitive report. Do you remember that? Do you remember that definitive report? And we reference it here on Hagmann and the Hagmann many times. the Accountability Review Board report, Chairman Ambassador Tom Pickering and Vice Chairman Admiral Michael Mullen. If you don't, folks, this is an extremely important document. I reference it here, and I'm trying to think. I believe it was like 38 or 39 pages. The number of pages of this report, I don't have it in front of me, but it is extremely significant. Extremely significant. It held a lot of significance. But the report itself fell short because Pickering has close ties to Iran and other special interest groups and countries. But anyway, as the co-chairman of that report and that review board later testified, they never interviewed Mrs. Clinton during their definitive investigation, nor did they cite a single email from Mrs. Clinton, and no one understood enough to call the foul. What about those pictures of Mrs. Clinton posing with jihadi fighters in Tripoli who had come to welcome her U.S. Air Force C-17 in October of 2011? How many of them have since joined up with Al-Qaeda or ISIS? How many of them took part in the murder of Stevens in Benghazi? For with our short memories, we forget that Libya was Hillary's war. Okay. Now, just a little bit more here. In separate tell-all accounts, the former Defense Secretaries Gates and Panetta agreed that Mrs. Clinton dragged Obama into this war kicking and screaming. We saw the fight against Gaddafi as a perfect opportunity to illustrate wisdom of her new national security dogma, responsibility to protect. Interesting phrase. I think we've heard that before, though, prior to Benghazi, haven't we? The Obama White House eventually bought it hook, line, and sinker, even touting the version of Hillary's war by saying that they had defeated Gaddafi by leading from behind. Where has Hillary's war left us? Now, I don't agree with 100% of what Mr. Timmerman says here. However, he makes some good points. To me, however, just doesn't expand it enough. Libya, he writes, is a disaster. Of course it is.
Yeah,
but it was organized. It was orchestrated to be that way. The militias who took part in the U.S.-backed rebellion against Gaddafi seized control of Tripoli this past summer, turning the international airport into a sand heap, forcing the evacuation of the remaining U.S. diplomats in Tripoli, shutting down much of Libya's oil production, and driving the elected government into exile. Today, two rival governments continue to jockey for power, while groups who had pledged loyalty to ISIS have taken over much of the eastern part of the country, including Derna and Benghazi. Now, these are two very important points here, very strategic points. Are you seeing a pattern here with ISIS? And I hope you are. I hope everyone is, and I know the listeners of the Hagmann Hagmann Report do see this pattern. Now, he calls this Hillary's war. But I would call this more appropriately Hillary's war at the behest of the globalists, or Hillary's war action as instructed by the globalists. Hillary's war not only ended any attempts at mediation between Gaddafi and his opponents. Of course, he's dead. Which we have since learned were favored by the U.S. military and had a reasonable chance of success. It also ushered into power a jihadist state that pledges support to ISIS. This was a plan, I contend, and now just to expand on what Mr. Timmerman wrote here, I contend that this was a plan all along. If you look at the bigger picture of this, if you go back into the 1871 Pike-Mazzini, the letter of the Three World Wars, and even if you don't subscribe to that particular aspect of things, look at how things are playing out. And I think that we're seeing here is this establishing a worldwide Islamic caliphate that's necessary. It's a necessary bad guy, if you will. But at the front, really at the very heart of this is Hillary Clinton, and those emails that are missing are in fact a necessary part of necessary part of identifying what she has, what her role is. Now, the Benghazi hoax, I referenced that. Again, 99-cent download at Amazon. I do not recommend buying this book. I do not, because to me it's a total fiction book. It's 122 pages. It is a product of Media Matters. And as far as I'm concerned, Media Matters is nothing more than the mouthpiece of the progressives and globalists. It's to me, it's just beyond. I don't know. It's just beyond anything. At this point, Joe, Media Matters. I don't even know how to describe this except a fictional account of things that are taking place.
It's a propaganda wing of the leftist-run side of the media.
Well, right, and
regardless, I mean, George Soros, yes, he's behind a lot of things, but he's just the financial backing of the leftist agenda, as there are backers to the rightist agenda in the.
Well, don't we have? I mean, we've got propaganda on both sides,
on
the right
absolutely.
and the left, and we have to recognize that, because
I mean, that's all it is pulling the heartstrings of the emotions of the people to get desired results and changes in behavior that they want.
Well, right, and as this applies to Media Matters, and in particular the Benghazi hoax, as you read through this, to me it's a thinly veiled cover-up. Really, it's a cover-up that really describes the attack at Benghazi as being unseen, or that you couldn't have seen it coming. It's an attempt to say that these attacks were being exploited by the right or Republicans, fishing for a scandal that didn't exist. Well, I'm sorry, you had 4 dead Americans. So,
and it was not. I mean, they turned it into a scandal by their actions after the fact, covering up. Proven now that they covered up the investigation. It's proven that they covered up the reasons behind it. It's proven that they intentionally lied from the UN ambassador, or the U.S. ambassador to the UN, to the president, to the Secretary of State. All went along with a false narrative as to why this happened publicly, and then defended it when their lie was even called out in public. And the fact that no discipline or nothing happened speaks to the level of, I don't want to say idiocy, but not the how naive the people are still.
Right, exactly. And the both the book, The Benghazi Hoax, Media Matters, as well as Hillary Rodham Clinton, and this particular renegade administration, references the account of the ARB report by Thomas Pickering and Mullen. Okay, and by the way, it is 39 pages. I did find it here on my hard drive. I was relying on the HTML page, or the HTML document, but I did find the PDF, and it's 39 pages. Extremely important number, and to me, this is kind of a wink and a nod to the Illuminists in power. And on page 17, another central number, or a significant number, I should say, notes an interesting date. This is on page 17 for those interested in numerology. It begins, on page 17, it begins 7/7/2012, which is actually a continuation of a previous, or of a sentence that began on page 16, but I'll read the whole sentence to you. While the June IED attack at the RP and the RPG attack targeting the UK convoy in Benghazi prompted the special mission to reduce movements off compound and have a 1-week pause between principal officers, the successful nature of Libya's 2012 national elections, which exceeded expectations, renewed Washington's optimism in Libya's future. Now, to me, I look at page 17 as perhaps being an important page for information. At the I'll just finish. It's a short paragraph here. I'll just finish reading it. This is from the ARB report, page 17 of a 39-page document, authored by Thomas Pickering. Nevertheless, the immediate period after the elections did not see the central government to increase its capacity to consolidate, control, or provide security in eastern Libya as efforts to form a government floundered and extremist militias in and outside Benghazi continued to work to strengthen their grip. At the time of the September attacks, Benghazi remained a lawless town nominally controlled by the Supreme Security Council, a coalition of militia elements loosely cobbled into a single force to provide interim security, but in reality run by a diverse group of local Islamist militias, each of whose strength ebbed and flowed depending on the ever-shifting alliances and loyalties of various members. There was a notional national police presence, but it was ineffectual. By August 2012, Special Mission Benghazi would evaluate the worsening security situation and its implications. Okay. Having said that, this is trying to do, I believe, in this report, the totality, but specifically, is say that we really can't pick, it was a very fluid situation in Benghazi. So it does deflect, the heart of that paragraph I read deflects the blame away from any acts of the State Department, any official acts of the State Department, or even the intelligence agencies operating in the north of Libya. Okay, now, having said all of that, what does this have to do with anything today? Let me just do this real quick here. If you haven't really, the author of that Accountability Review Board, Thomas Pickering. If you don't know who he is, and this is important because of his connections, he was the 17th Undersecretary of State for Political Affairs from 1997 to 2000. He was the United States Ambassador to Russia in office from 93 to 96, Ambassador to India from 92 to 93, Ambassador to the United Nations, 89 to 92. Ambassador to Israel from 85 to 88. You're starting to see connections here. Jordan, he also has El Salvador, Nigeria, and Jordan. But in particular, Pickering, he served as a Senior Vice President for International Relations at Boeing. He is serving as independent board member at the world's biggest pipe company in Moscow. Currently, he's affiliated with the International Crisis Group, and I can go on, but International Crisis Group?
What's that?
Well, you know what the International Crisis Group is, ICG. It's billed as a conflict prevention nonprofit NGO that carries out field research on violent conflict and advances policies to prevent, mitigate, or resolve conflict. People have heard about ICG. At least if you haven't, it would be good to to look that up. Once again, the International Crisis Group. This is Pickering's organization. It gives advice to governments and intergovernmental bodies like the United Nations, the European Union, the World Bank, on the prevention and resolution of deadly conflict. This is a think tank, basically, that it's a non-profit NGO that is deeply involved with foreign policy. That's ICG. But Pickering himself is, he lives in Fairfax County, Virginia. He serves. He also serves, and perhaps this is the most critical element of his bona fides and lifestyle and proclivities. He serves on the board of directors for CRDF Global and the American Iranian Council, which is an organization devoted to the normalization of relations between Iran and America. What do we see taking place today? This push toward this normalization of relations between Iran and America. Isn't that what we see going on behind the scenes? The violations, multiple violations by this government, including but not limited to Valerie Jarrett, Iranian-born. Where was Jarrett during around the same approximate time? What was she doing around the same approximate time as Benghazi, before, during, and after? Well, she was having secret meetings with Iranians in Arab countries. And if you look at this having, and the linchpin, according to Media Matters, is saying that Benghazi has, the scandal, which is actually a crime of Benghazi, it's a hoax. It's a political hoax. This according to Media Matters now. Because it's been thoroughly investigated and proven false. Well, who's proving it false? Among the people, among the reviews they cite is the ARB report, which I referenced, 39 pages. A very important number in the Illuminati globalist circles. But heading that report as head author is Thomas Pickering, who's heavily involved in normalizing or attempting to normalize the relations with Iran. And who's behind that? Of course, this particular renegade and his sidekick, Valerie Jarrett, and tied at the hip to Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and giving Clinton a pass for what happened in Benghazi. So if you don't think Benghazi is still relevant today, you've got, it's my view anyway, that it's extremely relevant to today, because if the truth about Benghazi came out, it would destroy Hillary. It would destroy this. In fact, there would be, in my view at least, there would be criminal elements that were criminal penalties against, criminal charges against Hillary and Obama and others involved in this, including the former and current CIA director, and especially the current CIA director, and would show complicity, behind-the-scenes complicity, of the renegade, as well as Valerie Jarrett and others, to circumvent the legal process, the diplomatic process, of even the current Secretary of State. Well, maybe not the current Secretary of State, but the contemporaneous one, at least prior to Clinton, to hash out a deal behind the scenes with Iran. So you've got all of this just playing behind the scenes. And to bring in, to validate that there was no criminal conduct with respect to Benghazi, you have somebody like Thomas Reeve Pickering with those credentials. That's like the Warren Commission picking Earl Warren, or the 9/11 Commission picking Henry Kissinger to head up the investigation into 9/11. Or wasn't that who they were going to pick?
Henry Kissinger,
yeah. Might as well bring Dick Cheney in.
And the families of the victims from 9/11 spoke out, right, and had him removed due to a conflict of interest. So
anyway, I'll just close with this. I think that the piece by Ken Timmerman is extremely important, and frankly, it shows right now. I think it exposes, even though it was written back on March 6th, it's very current right now, and it exposes what's really going on behind the scenes, as well as the push toward really the caliphate that's being organized in the Middle East, and the push toward this one world order behind the
two-state solution.
It dovetails with that, and you've got a lot on that.
Yep, I do. Benjamin Netanyahu and Barack Obama on collision course over Palestinian two-state solution. Israel and America set for new confrontation after the U.S. president bluntly restates belief in Palestinian state to solve Middle Eastern problems. A triumphant Netanyahu appeared to be on a new collision course with President Obama on Wednesday night after the U.S. president bluntly restated his belief in a Palestinian state and criticized the Israeli leader's re-election campaign tactics. In a pointed conversation, Mr. Obama was said to be deeply concerned about comments made about Israeli Arab population, a spokesman calling it divisive. The Obama administration is deeply concerned about the use of diverse rhetoric in Israel that sought to marginalize Arab citizens, Josh Earnest, a White House spokesman, told reporters. The rhetoric undermines the values of democratic ideals that have been important to our democracy and is an important part of what binds the U.S. and Israel together. These are the views the administration intends to communicate directly to the Israelis, and not only to the Israelis, to the United Nations. But who is this president to meddle in a democratic election
that
was carried out by the people, the citizens, which was a much more expansive win for Netanyahu than anyone predicted?
Which I think is interesting because, remember, in the lead up to the elections, everyone was saying, it's going to be tight, and even up through that.
Netanyahu behind in the polls for a couple of days before the headlines come out. Now U.S. is threatening sanctions against Israel and makes excuses for Iran. According to now the Weekly Standard, the U.S. government might impose sanctions on Israel or allow its greatest ally in the Middle East to be tried in the International Criminal Court, according to Politico. And let's go back to Iran for a second. I want to read a story from today from the Washington Examiner. Iran endorses nuclear EMP attack on United States.
Wow.
Suspected for years of plotting to dismantle the U.S. electric grid, American officials had confirmed that Iranian military brass have endorsed a nuclear electromagnetic pulse explosion that would attack the country's power system. American defense experts made the discovery while translating a secret Iranian military handbook, raising new concerns about Tehran's recent nuclear talks with the administration. The issue of a nuclear EMP attack was raised in the final hours of this week's election in Israel when U.S. authority Peter Vincent Pry penned a column for Arutz Shiva warning of Iran's threat to free nations. Iranian military documents describe such a scenario, including a recently translated document textbook that endorses nuclear EMP attack against the United States, he wrote. A knowledgeable source that said the textbook discusses an EMP attack on America in 20 different places, and it goes on from there. And not only is Iran and their military openly threatening a EMP attack on the United States, while this is going on, Obama, this from the Washington Post, Washington Times, is Obama clinging to preposterous argument on Iran over the agreement of the nuclear deal. And a top Democrat in the House Foreign Affairs Committee says the Obama administration is clinging to a preposterous argument if it thinks Iranian leaders can be trusted to stick by weapon-bearing rules of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty after economic sanctions on Iran are lifted. Representative Brad Sherman made the charge during a committee hearing Thursday after a top administration official asserted that the nuclear deal was being sought with the Islamic Republic and will ultimately be ensured by Tehran's long-term agreement to abide by the treaty after meeting their demands from Washington and other world powers. Bottom line, even though certain obligations are completed by Iran, it cannot become a nuclear weapon state, Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken told the committee. It will be largely bound under the Non-Proliferation Treaty not to make or acquire a nuclear weapon. So there's double talk here.
Yes, a lot of it.
We have the United Nations who has been, and the U.S. with the United Nations have been working on a nuclear disarmament for all nations. You remember in, 2012 during the run-up to the last election in the United States, there was a hot mic while Obama was in Russia.
That's right.
And he talked about after the next election he would have more latitude or leeway in
flexibility, I think was the word he used, and that was intended to be passed on to the Russian Medvedev. Yes.
But it goes on to say, if Iran makes an agreement, it will make it with full knowledge that if it violates the agreement, there will be severe consequences. An exchange on Capitol Hill came as the Associated Press reported Thursday that a draft nuclear accord now being negotiated between the Obama administration hardware it could use to make the atomic bomb by about 40% over the last decade, while offering the Iranians immediate relief from sanctions that crippled the economy. Iran claims that its nuclear program is purely a peaceful process that is electricity generation and medical research. Now, but there's something there that is missing from all of these stories about Iran and the Obama administration. Why would Iran agree to a deal with the U.S., aside from the sanctions being lifted, because many of them already have been?
Right.
Why is the administration bending over backwards to help Iran do something that they already have?
Well,
allegedly.
I'm glad you brought that up, because, and this Standeo, he's right on the money and right on the tip of the spear with much of his information. Listen to this. Maybe this is an answer to your question. Okay. Recently, like within the last 48 hours, Saudi Arabia had this joint meeting with Saudi Arabia and the royalty there told Kerry that Iran is taking control of the region as hundreds of Iranian fighters enter Iraq. Guess who is commanding a group of Iranian fighters into Iraq? And of course, Saudi Arabia is worried about Iran's regional expansionism and their nuclear weapons. This was reported in the Arab newspaper, but the Pan-Arab newspaper. But guess who's commanding those forces under the Iranian militias and pushing into Iraq? But none other than General Qasem Soleimani. Remember Standeo talking about this man.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're right. Now we're seeing alliances, kind of like that old or that TV program. What was it? Was it Survivor, where they had alliances?
I never watched that show.
Okay, I don't know. One of the TV programs.
That's right.
Yeah, they formed alliances on the island or something or whatever, or maybe it wasn't. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So there's alliances forming behind the scenes, and you can see where this grand chess match is taking place. Now you've got Iranian militias getting into Iraq, where we still have a nominal presence but influence, and these Iranian militias are actually under the power of General Qasem Soleimani and threatening the stability there. And of course Saudi Arabia is saying that wait a minute. We want inspections that ensure Iran will not pursue or possess nuclear weapons. But Saudi Arabia is saying we're going to ensure the right that all the countries in the region to use nuclear energy peacefully, according to the IAEA's requirements, and under that agency's supervision. So you've got this multifaceted thing taking place. You got this Soleimani going against ISIS, which threatens everybody, but then you've got alliances forming behind that.
And back to the Israeli and Obama collision course, after years of blocking UN efforts to pressure Israelis and Palestinians into a lasting two-state solution, the United States is edging closer towards supporting UN Security Council resolution that would call for the resumption of political talks to conclude a final peace settlement, according to Western diplomats. Now, obviously this has everything to do with Netanyahu's statement the night before the election and his re-election, as he said he would not, go and issue a two-state solution or go along with a two-state solution. And we see the change in tone and rhetoric from the president now saying he's going to seek a UN resolution. And it goes on to say, shortly before this week's election, the United States informed diplomatic partners that it would hold off any moves in the UN Security Council designed to put Israel on the spot at the United Nations in the event Netanyahu's challenger, Isaac Herzog won the elections. Yep. But U.S. officials signaled a willingness to consider a UN resolution in the event Netanyahu was reelected and formed a coalition government opposed to peace talks. The United States has not yet circulated a draft, but diplomats say Washington has some red lines and it's unwilling to agree to set a fixed deadline for political talks to conclude. The more the new government veers to the right, the more likely you will see something in New York, said a Western diplomat. Now, by that, they're meaning at the UN. It goes on to say that since the State Department spokeswoman on Wednesday, Jen Psaki, did not rule out the possibility of the United States supporting a UN resolution on the Israeli-Palestine two-state solution. We're not going to be prejudiced what we would do, or we are not going to prejudice what we would do if there was a UN action, she told reporters, though. It goes on to say decades Democrats and Republicans administrations have resisted a role for the UN Security Council in dealing with the Middle East crisis. They have argued consistently that ensuring peace can only be achieved through direct negotiations between the parties. Israeli leaders have also strongly opposed giving the world body a greater role in bringing about a deal. It says, however, now, due to Netanyahu's pre-election declaration and his win of the Israeli elections, the deliberations are going to continue under the UN. And this is undermining completely everything that Israel is hoping to do, what they voted for. Not only what the leaders said, but what the citizens voted for.
Well,
and we're threatening sanctions on them now. While negotiating with Iran. I mean, this is insanity. And, I don't know if it's God or if it's the way things have to be right now in this time in the world we're in, but why is this administration on every issue always on the wrong side? I mean, always. Yeah. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, they're always on the wrong. It could be a simple, something so simple. They're always seem to be on the wrong side of what is the norm or
what's even
respectful.
Common sense.
Right.
I mean,
and Obama didn't call and congratulate Netanyahu, by the way. He didn't even use his name. They issued a statement through the press secretary saying, we support the Israelis in their, process of democracy in their election, having the democratic process, that won.
Isn't that? I mean, that's really crazy when you look at what's really taking place here, and we are. Is
it a coincidence that literally, from a biblical perspective, from a moral perspective, from a common sense perspective, for this administration to be wrong,
even from
every side they've ever taken on any issue, is that a coincidence, or is there something more at play here?
No,
and I don't think
it's not a coincidence.
It's the administration even realizing it half the time, or they're just that anti. I mean, it's like they hate themselves and everybody else in the country.
You know what this reminds me of, and this is kind of a really deep, dark, twisted, convoluted rabbit hole, but humor me anyway. We talk about the significance of mysterious, pyramids and symbols and obelisks and other Egyptian architecture monuments that are rising across the United States, don't we? Here's my question. Are we seeing something a little bit more? And we've had guests on like Tim Alberino and, of course, Paul McGuire and the numerous guests that talk about Obama himself. And I was doing some research for the show, and I'm thinking, what do we know here, or where does Obama himself fit into history? And I'm talking ancient Babylonian Egyptian history. Could Obama be America's first, not usurper, although he is, certainly not president, but pharaoh? Could there be something with Obama who really has become the second coming of Osiris, the Egyptian sun god? It was Osiris, at least in terms of the belief of the ancients, whose spirit was reincarnated in the person of the pharaoh. And folks, you remember seeing photographs, even in mainstream news, mocking, or at least some in mocking of the image of Obama as a pharaoh. And are we not seeing, perhaps, connecting some dots? The god Osiris is the very same deity depicted on our $1 bill as the all-seeing eye in the capstone hovering over the Novus Ordo Seclorum pyramid. Let's look at this in a larger sense. Is Obama our first pharaoh? Remember, he's the president of the world, or citizen of the world, according to the headline on Drudge. He's the president of the world, or the world's president. Remember those headlines? And even going back, if you think back to 2008 and to a lesser extent, but still there, 2012, when you had political pundits talking about Obama's stunning messianic tone and conversation during his presidential campaign. And remember his followers speaking of Obama as the one. And the radiant sun rays in Obama's logo. Remember, symbols mean things. His extraordinary oratory skills, his uncanny ability to inspire the masses. Now, again, I'm going down a rabbit trail here, but think about what Joe said with Israel and how we're squaring up against Israel, the covenant with God, God's people. And think about what the pharaohs did. Think about the Babylonian, Egyptian history in particular. And then think about the mythology behind it and the deities behind that mythology. The countenance and leadership qualities that Obama exhibited, at least early on, couldn't they be likened to those attributed to Egypt's age-old sun god? Of course, Egypt, we have to recognize, situated geographically in North Africa. Meanwhile, Obama's roots can be traced to a total of 3 continents. His birth, or ostensible birth, to a white mother was in America. He was raised as a boy in Indonesia and Asia. But his biological father reportedly came from Kenya in Africa. Well, okay, all of that to say this. The Egyptian deity Osiris was usually depicted as black, but sometimes, especially in the framework of a god of agriculture and vegetation, green. Obama isn't he an environmentalist? And doesn't he hold that environmentalism as a godlike quality portrayed by the leftists as the ecologically correct green candidate? Well, look, Osiris had a lot of titles. The Great Word, as a matter of fact, he was said to be endowed with the creative power of speech. And there are so many similarities between Obama and Osiris, the pharaoh. One has to wonder whether, and I believe this to be true, whether Obama is really invoking body and soul the spirit of Osiris. And don't forget Isis relative to Osiris. And what are we seeing today? Osiris or Isis?
Oh goodness! If I remember right, they were either husband and wife, or father and. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check, but yeah, there is a relationship there.
Yeah, I mean,
and it's no coincidence that they repackaged, renamed Al Qaeda into the now known ISIS terrorist group, or ISIL. They don't even call it ISIL anymore. Never really explained in the mainstream why they chose ISIS and why they or ISIL, but except for the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, which is a good excuse. I mean, you can really
the Egyptian myth of creation, and I just want to touch on this because you got this right.
And this is important.
I think it is, again, from a.
How about we hit on it on the other side?
Let's do that folks, you're listening to a very special Thursday edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. So glad you're joining us tonight. I want to say hello to all the listeners we have in the United Kingdom listening live. Karen in Rome, God bless you so much.
Thursday, March 19th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, one day before the spring equinox, solar eclipse, and supermoon, I believe.
It's going to be a heck of a day.
I'm not sure if I got that right. There's a few things happening tomorrow on the equinox pertaining to the sun. And
it's going to be the 21st, right? Or is it tomorrow?
No, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. It's tomorrow, and it begins tomorrow, and I think it goes...
I had a story I can find from earlier in the week that gets into what is all happening on the 20th. But
anyway.
We have some stuff coming up that is, I guess you'd say, very important. As people I've seen in the chat reference, an eclipse has been known as judgment against Gentile nations in past, and a few other biblical and I'd like to say when we were talking about frequency yesterday and how frequency affects things.
We're going to be doing a show on that.
And this is a part of it too with the with the supermoon that changes the level of how the tide works. When the moon is as close as it is, and it affects the tides more. Well, we're made of water, mostly water ourselves. What kind of effect does that have on us and our brains? And that's just a small example. On what's happening, though, what's happening is on a much larger scale. We're in the middle of the blood moon tetrad. We have, things happening that are lining up too. That says, that point to conflict between Israel and the rest of the world. And we have to be diligent and keep our mind on the Lord in prayer and in the Scriptures to make sure that we know the season that they're currently in.
Yeah, you're dead on accurate there. That's for sure. Well, just to finish up what I was saying before the break, I think it's important for people to understand the story of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, the Egyptian myth of creation, and it comes from mythology. Why do we have to understand this for what's happening today? Because we're seeing a lot of what's happening today rooted in the mythology of
ancient Egypt and Babylon.
Exactly. And it isn't it interesting how everything seems to be intersecting with the Bible and with other, even extra biblical texts, at least, if nothing else, using those as a footnote merely, as a reference, or even a point with the just to reinforce the biblical account, but very well done, I think. But having said that, very simply, from Geb, the sky god and Nut, the earth goddess, came 4 children, this according to Egyptian mythology: Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Now, Osiris was the oldest, became the king of Egypt, and he married his sister Isis. Think about that. Okay, Osiris was reportedly a good king, commanded the respect of all who lived on the earth and the gods who dwelled in the netherworld. However, Set was always jealous of Osiris because he didn't command the respect of those on earth or those in the netherworld. One day, Set transformed himself into a vicious monster and attacked Osiris, killing him, and then he cut up Osiris into pieces and strew the pieces throughout the length and width and breadth of Egypt. You know this story, folks. Now, Osiris dead. Well, what happened? He was reassembled, right? Isis, who had great magical powers, decided to find her husband and bring him back to life long enough so that they could have a child. Well, Isis roamed the countryside collecting the pieces of her husband's body, reassembling them. Once she completed this task, she breathed breath of life into his body and resurrected him. And they were together again, and Isis became pregnant soon thereafter. And Osiris was able to descend into the underworld, where he became the lord of that domain. Okay, the child that was born to Isis was named Horus, the hawk god. All right, but anyway, you know where the obelisk comes from. That is the and I'm going to put this delicately, of course, that's the reproductive part of Osiris, and of course Isis. Well, you get the idea, right? So Isis, to me, when you look at Isis, the goddess Isis in mythology, compare it to what's happening today. And now, even more importantly, and I think that this is important for us to understand, think about ISIS, not the goddess, but the American CIA, Mossad, Saudi, Intel covert operation. And this is exactly what's taking place here as we go further and further from the 9/11 attacks that set the stage for this perpetual state of warfare in which we're in, terror and chaos. Obama is at the forefront, as well as other countries, including Israel, of striking down ISIS. ISIS provides the perfect excuse for the re-intervention of U.S. NATO occupying forces in various Middle Eastern countries. And one that stands out in particular, or should stand out especially, is Syria. Because we can go back and connect Benghazi to Syria, because Libya was really, or in particular Libya, the northern part of Libya, the northeastern part from Benghazi to Derna, from west to east there, was the, as Michael Reagan described in his previous article right after Benghazi, the Ho Chi Minh Trail of weapons and soldiers helping the anti-Assad rebels, to helping to destabilize Syria. So this is what it's all about. Are we seeing, folks, and I'm going to ask this question, are we seeing through Obama as a potential Egyptian pharaoh? In fact, not just any pharaoh, but the first pharaoh of Egypt. As ridiculous as that sounds, are we not seeing this perhaps play out in a, I would say, a more modern mythological type of tale? And especially his stance against Israel. And if you look at the United Nations as being the modern Tower of Babel, or the modern the vehicle for a one world, new world order, isn't it logical to believe, or at least wouldn't it be logical to take a look at the old Tower of Babel under Nimrod, or at the hands of Nimrod, and everything that came before that, and all the mythology around that, and superimpose that over to what's taking place today? Even the names are the same, including ISIS. Is it just a happy coincidence, or a coincidence with respect to the acronym ISIS? I don't think so. I don't think. And look, ISIS is a horrible, horrible, horrible organization, and I contend, folks, that ISIS has the presence here in the United States thanks to not just this particular administration and the people around him, this renegade, this undocumented alien, but all throughout history, all throughout recent history, including the George W. Bush administration. You must not, in my view, you must not give him a pass, because the stage was set under George W. Bush, including the 9/11 attacks, and everyone around him, and especially those around him, to put the new world, one world order on a fast track to where it is today. Because you can't tell me, as an outgoing president, that being George W. Bush, and even the vice president, Cheney, Rumsfeld, others, you can't tell me that they did not know, or they had no reason to suspect, the inclinations, the bias, and the where Obama was going to be taking the nation. You can't tell me they weren't read in on that. You can't tell me they didn't know the color of the day. Going back to the beginning of the show, I believe they did. So what we're seeing right now is this ideological and strategic, or what we're seeing now is ideological and strategic alliances evolving, or that evolved during the Bush regime.
Politically and economically, even worse for America today is the new Chinese central bank. Maybe not worse for America, but the allies of the United States have been economically all going towards this new anti or other IMF type central bank.
Exactly, and in the end, it doesn't really come all down to the centralization from the central bank to the central power to the central religion. This is, and these, as you look at it, as you step back, and we cannot possibly, Joe and I don't have the manpower. I mean, our eyeballs are already popping out, bleeding, and bouncing off the walls from trying to look at all the information coming in, and it's so difficult to do that. But yeah, I mean, from McCain, from Clinton, all these people, these different alliances, these different relationships, yet they're all moving, it seems like, with the tide. No one's bucking the tide, or very few anyway, and everybody's moving with the tide, and the tide is going toward the centralization, which will ultimately be the one world order, new world order. And as we look at this, we look at NATO, we look at the UN, we look at McCain and Saudi Arabia and others. All of the players, they're all involved. It seems like, it's interesting to me. ISIS has been brutal in its massacres, targeting the infidels and the Kafirs who refuse to convert to Islam, and especially the Yazidis, the Christians. I mean, this is just beyond anything human. There's no humanity here. And you've got photographs of McCain, a smiling McCain yet, standing in a group with top leaders of the Free Syrian Army and Jabhat al-Nusra, which is really now that used to be the Al-Qaeda of Syria, but has now emerged with ISIS. So you've got a direct ISIS-McCain link. And if that's not bad enough, well, I mean, how many others? And how many have secretly had meetings and these backroom dealings and the meetings in the bowels of the embassies all across the Middle East, and especially within the centralized the embassies of Saudi Arabia, where America and Western intelligence seems to be doing its bidding for Saudi Arabia. It's our blood for their oil, isn't it? And going back to Obama and his meteoric rise without pedigree into the office, now we're seeing, at least in my view, looking at this and researching this, and Joe and I were talking about this, not only ISIS, but as we see things going forward, and we know because even I think Time Magazine, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, didn't they picture Obama as like a pharaoh in one of their covers? I don't recall if it was Time Magazine, but it doesn't matter because the connection was already there. But think about Obama and Israel right now. And remember, Obama promised Israel many things. While in Israel, Obama went to Israel. He met with Prime Minister Olmert. Remember that? He met with Netanyahu, Barak, and other leaders. And at one point, he did pledge his loyalty publicly to the nation. And he even at one time declared Jerusalem to be their inviolable capital. Okay, that's what he said. But what happened? What did he do? Could Barack Obama have invoked, and as strange as this sounds, I know, but just bear with me on this, could he have seriously become the Pharaoh, the new original Pharaoh of the United States? Could he have become the reincarnated Osiris, which ultimately is satanic and Luciferian in origin? Will he take the reins of a tyrannical state erected by his equally corrupt and complicit predecessors, perhaps, and make himself like unto a pharaoh? Is that the change that we might be expecting? Is this why many new pyramids have risen in the United States? Did you know that? Did you know that there have been buildings of pyramids here in the United States? And even Israel. Well, one promise we do have, the Bible does state that God's chosen, that all who trust in Jesus will not be taken by surprise. So that means all of you guys are not going to be taken by surprise. We will figure this out together in due time. We will know of that. You can be positive, we promise, because you're watching these changes in real time. You're watching and you're keeping your eyes open while you're also balancing it out with Scripture and with time in the Bible. So you need to do that. But it's fitting that we make this connection, I believe. And we talk about this mythological. It was Newsweek. Thank you. Somebody had sent me an email here. The Newsweek had Obama as the pharaoh. Anyway, at least one of it could be more magazines, but that was the portrayal there. At least in the one that I saw, and I don't believe this is Photoshopped. But anyway, so there we have it, and I think that puts a lot of things into perspective with respect to ISIS. And we can't, and folks, we can't rely on Fox News. We can't rely on any news agency, and don't even rely on us necessarily. Just go ahead and do the research if you have the time and inclination. Do it yourself, but look at this in as a whole, because it's so important. Please look at this in a larger, global, and historical perspective. I think, because if you try to look at all of these incidents, for example, if you look at Benghazi as just a one-off, or look at it without the perspective of the larger padding of Arab Spring and the takeover of Libya and the supplying of weapons and all of this, then you will come across believing this nonsense like Media Matters. You'll come across believing that Benghazi was a hoax or is overblown. You'll end up believing that Arab Spring was a spontaneous uprising, and we know that not to be the truth.
Not at all. Not at all. And, we have, Gaddafi coming to the White House, people coming to the White House that later get killed by the administration, and you mentioned and referenced the remarks Hillary Clinton made when Gaddafi was found to be killed. We talked about the administration being on the wrong side of everything. Well, they that in Egypt insisted that the president leave, and they implemented the Muslim Brotherhood leader.
Right.
And
they overthrew Mubarak and then implemented Muslim Brotherhood. Right.
They did it in Egypt. They did it in Libya. They did it are trying to do it in Syria. They have went across and are trying to implement their own agenda across the Middle East, and they've done this through destabilization.
But see, we make and break empires. We enthroned Saddam in 1963
of hundreds of thousands of people. What was it? Millions of people. What am I talking about? And what was it in Syria last time we looked? 11 million people displaced?
It was between 10 and 11 million, depending on which figures you want. But even at 10 million, let's say 11 million.
I mean, all the death that's happening over there.
That's right.
And we talked about this with Ted Broer last night, the blood sacrifices.
Very much,
This is exactly what it is. And they are... they've been trying to this divide and conquer game here. They've perfected it in the Middle East. They will perfect it here.
Well,
to those that will be allowed to be swayed by that.
And are we allowed to talk about that? Seriously, or when I say allowed to talk about that, are we? It seems like a lot of people don't want to hear about that. It's uncomfortable for people. The deception is being perpetuated. and allowed, and the blood sacrifice is being covered up.
Right, and we might be deceived in the what's happening in the world with the news organizations we have to rely on, or even alternative news. We don't know, some of the people behind some of the organizations' websites and such, if they have agendas or other motivations, or how much of the alternative media is compromised. But we see this. I just saw this article. Special ops targets social media. We talked about the divide and conquer. They say that the U.S. Special Operation Forces elite commandos are engaged in high-risk operations around the world and are adding a new focus to their portfolio of activities, social media, and other unconventional information warfare threats. Let me ask you, aside from actual threats, how is information warfare a threat? Is the truth the threat?
Sure, they don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to be informed, because information, an informed populace represents a danger to the people.
Well, they say...
Or danger to the power, I'm sorry.
The social media is an unconventional component of strategies in the security environment in general, just playing a role in recruiting individuals to causes. They don't get into focus. They say we must therefore deploy our ability to interact with key influencers through this medium, or else risk blinding ourselves to this important conduit of information and influence in unfolding crises. Then they go on to say terrorists have been using social media such as Facebook, Twitter to communicate. Yeah. Well, let me tell you something. If I was, let's say, a militia guy, and I wanted to form a militia and went on Twitter and started an account and started talking about that, how fast until I'm shut down and actually visited and arrested by somebody?
Say that
if I wanted to form a militia.
Oh, I got
even
you. Yeah.
Without the violence against, just to form a community police force.
Right.
We'll say.
Right.
Of law-abiding citizens who, kind of like the FBI's InfraGard program, only on a civilian level. How fast would they shut me down on Facebook and Twitter?
Oh, I don't know
ISIS?
if you'd even get into you have a chance to.
Yeah, ISIS can they have hashtags, and Twitter basically endorses. I mean, nothing. Well, instead of influencing these people like the ISIS, anybody who's promoting or perpetuating violence, or the influencing of people to join this group, should be shut down. Anybody who's trying to influence people to commit violence or be a part of violence.
Absolutely.
I understand that.
Now, okay, it's one thing to incite violence. It's another thing to inform. But there are times, and I believe there's a direct connection between information, being informed, and wanting to change the way things are by any means necessary. Does that mean that one's inciting violence? No, I don't believe so. But what alternatives? Okay, as we stand here today in 2015, looking at the United States, can we take our government to federal court? No. Can we demand transparency? How can we demand transparency? You've got news articles about transparency. Before we get into that, I just want to touch on a couple of emails. From Lori. Thank you, Lori, for your email. And, of course, folks, if you want to communicate with us during the show, go to hagmannandhagmann.com, click on the Contact Us Now. You just fill out that form. It comes right to our studio. Lori sends this: Obama in Iran. It's not Obama as much as it is Valerie Jarrett, who has sympathies to Iran. Well, that's true. And I remember being told one time, look, don't just focus on Obama. Obama is just one person. Look at the people that he brings into his inner circle and his power. And we do that. I think we do, right?
And we don't believe that. I would wonder, not that we'll know on this side of the world, how many decisions he made that were his own versus how many were, or how many laws were his own, how many executive orders were his own. Speeches. I don't think many of them are, but some of them might be. There's a chance, but he has speechwriters, he has law writers, he has. Obama didn't write any of the 100,000 million words in the Obamacare law.
Of course not, and the person who wrote that, of course, was laughing at or had a hand in writing that the Obamacare law, is laughing at the stupidity of the American people overtly, and of course. We saw him before the Congressional Committee. Gabe writes this, and this is interesting as well. He said, Doug and Joe, tonight you are really, really reaching. This is the very first time I've thought so. Please don't give that idiot, meaning Obama, any credit for being anything but a con man. Well,
so the title of the show is Poised with a Question Mark.
Well, yeah, but you can only be a con man so long, okay? For I don't believe for a moment that Obama is the brains of the operation, but I also believe I do believe that there are satanic forces at work behind what's going on today. Now, if you believe that, then and if you believe in the wider conspiracy of things, and we're just talking here at the table. We're just up talking, having a conversation at the table. Is it out of the realm of possibility, for example, that we are seeing the occult being practiced in Washington? We know. I mean, look at the layout of Washington. Look at all the obelisks. Look at the connections. I mean, you can read the books of Tom Horn and Paul McGuire and other books, and you can see. It's plain. The doctrine of Freemasonry at the highest of levels, the doctrine of the occult being implemented here. Now, are we reaching when we say this? You know, the Pharaoh invoking like the Pharaoh of ancient Egypt. Not necessarily. Consider the fact that Obama's first his inaugural speech, or not inaugural speech, but his speech was done on the Pergamon, a replica of that. And sorry, I just slaughtered that. But you know what I'm saying? I mean, you're seeing a lot of unnecessary architecture and symbolism being pulled into the mix here. Is that meaningless to you? Or is that meaningless to them? I don't think it's meaningless to them. It might be meaningless to you, meaning all of us, but certainly I think it has meaning to them. And and belief is a driver of action. And I always like to say too, it's not what we believe, it's what they believe. That's important because we're operating off of their playbook. We're reading their mail, so to speak. So, what do they believe? And are we reaching? Well, maybe we are, but sometimes I think you've got to think outside of that box, because if you want to stay in that box or even stay near the box, well, then there are other avenues where you can get your information that'll tell you pretty much what you should think. You go to a university to expand, or at least the theory is, you go to a university college to expand your knowledge base, and your wisdom, your outlook. They teach you supposedly, or at least that's the theory, to teach you to think outside of the box, to widen your intellectual experience. Isn't that what it's for? So, if this radio show were that type of a, like a university, compare it to that, then we're reaching, going beyond, and looking at the entirety, not just the little nuggets that we're being pointed to, but the entirety of the situation. And I think when you start talking about, and we've had reports where people have worshipped the Babylonian gods and had little, not seances, but little worship services to Babylonian gods in the halls of D.C. and the halls of Wall Street. So knowing that,
in Rome,
yeah. So knowing that, what are we really looking at here? Is this? Are we grasping at straws? I don't. Hey, maybe we are, and if we are we expanding your thoughts, minds, and to look at something? Maybe look at it a different way or a larger way. I think perhaps that's a good thing. But thank you for your email, and I just want to say that we do our best, and. I'll just give a nod to Stephen M. from New York City as well. Thank you for your email. God bless you, and thanks for listening. All right, but moving on. One thing I didn't do, and I'll just warn people, I didn't update the website to have the current program playing, so you'd have to go just click on the RSS feed on the top, or click on Listen Live or something, or I can do it at some point.
Yeah, we're going to be taking calls at 661-244-9839. If you want to chime in after you dial that number, make sure you press 1. It doesn't tell you to do that anymore. I said that at the beginning of the show, but I want to reiterate it for those who might have joined us late. I don't know if you want to move on. I got a couple of pieces of news.
Sure, let's go.
The EU Parliament declares abortion and gay marriage to be human rights. The European Parliament last week declared gay marriage and abortion to be fundamental human rights. These designations were approved on March 12th as part of the annual report on human rights and democracy. The Parliament is infamous for espousing strong progressive positions and pushing those extreme policies down to its member nations, working to make them law. According to the language of the report, it is regrettable that a woman's right to control her own body remains an ideological battleground, they say. And I'm going to segue this into what came out from the Presbyterian Church. They approved same-sex marriage yesterday on March 17th, Tuesday. On March 17th, the Presbyterian Church, majority of the Presbyterian Church, approved the amendment to the church changing the church's constitution and its definition of marriage from being between a man and a woman to two people, traditionally a man and a woman. This is the Presbyterian Church, offshoot of the Protestant faith.
So what they're saying is, so they're opening their arms into the homosexual law. They're now saying, okay, we're going to accept this as the norm now.
Yeah, the amendment provides that no member of the clergy will be compelled to preside at a same-sex marriage or to host such a ceremony on church property, but they've already voted in homosexual clergy being allowed to preach.
Wow.
So, I mean, in our local the church I got married at, the pastor has been there for decades. I
remember him.
He left, and it wasn't
when you were born.
It wasn't because of this reason, not that he said that, but this was an issue where he really he saw the divide. His own church got divided through this issue. Some pastors left, and he actually retired this week for health reasons. But they say 1.8 million members in the Presbyterian Church of the USA.
All this from 3.5% of the population.
Yeah.
Supposedly being either homosexual, transgendered.
I heard a commercial recently that talks about teenage runaways. And it starts off, teenage runaways, 40% of teenagers run away. Then it goes on to say over half of them are LGBT. And, this is why they run. Just completely.
No one questions the statistics.
Right. And you're correct. I actually saw some documentation from a pro-homosexual site that talked about it. It was 4%. They said it was just under 4%.
Yeah, it's actually 3.5%.
But they say that
those are based on numbers. I'm sorry.
They say that there's at least 5 times more they believe that won't admit to it. 5 to 10 times more. So they count those as sometimes. That's why we could be seeing this. But I don't know. Is the younger generation now so inclined to believe that it's okay to not matter who you are loving in terms of a lifelong relationship, which is ordained between a man and a woman? Well, to procreate and make a family and have children.
And we had talked about this before, and remember, this is what Hitler did. I shouldn't say Hitler did. Getting into this is a whole different the propaganda aspect, how the laws were changed.
And we always say, you don't hate the sinner, you hate the sin. But how does the church embrace sin and continue? That's what gets me. Even in this article, it talks about the Catholic Church, and it says that even the Southern Baptist Church issued multiple statements in opposition of same-sex marriage. And then it went on to say that the Catechism of the Catholic Church similarly rejects homosexual actions, describing the acts as acts of grave depravity. So the question I had was, knowing the Presbyterian is part of the Protestant branch, well, now they're coming in an ecumenical union with the Catholicism, but, I guess you could state as theory that they could have done this to be against what the Catholic Church believes, not that I mean, that used to be an issue, but that's not an issue anymore. They're bringing back and I saw a billboard driving around today. It's on Cherry Street on between 14th and 12th, where there's a Pope, a mural of the Pope. And he's there, and there's a kid running around, and you see the sun in the background, and in big letters it says tradition. Really?
Tradition?
Yeah.
Well, what does
that's
that mean,
to understand.
though?
Tradition. Not the tradition of Jesus, but the tradition of churches.
Of the church.
And yes, and it's important to make that distinction. We're talking about the holidays. We're talking about the way the masses are done. All of it. Not unity, not peace, not love, not Jesus. A mural of the Pope's face and the word tradition.
My goodness.
I don't know if that's just here or why even that's here, but I'm assuming that you have those across the country.
Huh. That's something. Wow. I want to thank Elaine S. for this. This is going back in my topic about the pharaohs and such, and she reminds me, and of course reminds all of the listeners, remember when Tom Horn talked about going into that Masonic temple very close to the White House in Washington, D.C.? Remember that interview? And he was told that each president has a ritual to invoke the spirit of Osiris and dwell in him.
I heard something much worse that presidents do.
Well, yeah, that's
nothing along these lines, but
okay,
it is along those lines.
And Elaine writes, when Tom Horn asked about this ritual, the Mason giving him the tour would not answer that question, and I think this is important because we don't know. I mean, we know bits and pieces, just tiny little kind of glimpses, kind of like how a movie projector has 30 frames per second. Well, might get a glimpse of 1 or 2 frames per second of something, and almost subliminal. But this is interesting. It's less than sublime, and that's very correct. Tom Horn writes about it, I believe, in not Exo Vaticana, but it might have been Exo Vaticana, but his other book, the name escapes me right now, but very interesting. Thank you, Elaine, for writing that. And one more here.
And we could take calls, but I have a lot of
the
TSA SPOT program. We have Operation Jade Helm 15. I don't know if you want to get into that.
Regina, thank you for this. Again, FreemanTV.com, Obama clone of an Egyptian pharaoh. So I don't know. Are we reaching? And going back to Gabe's email, Gabe, you know what? Maybe if we are, it's for a reason. Maybe we need to expand our thought processes. And I'm speaking to you, but I'm not. I'm doing it respectfully. I want to be very respectful because sometimes we don't know, and this is a conversation we're having. This is a conversation that the weight of your comments they're important to us. So anyway, yeah, go ahead, Joe. Take it.
Operation
Jade Helm. 15.
Yeah, 2015. This is a operation that is scheduled for a few states such as Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado. It is an 8-week joint military and interagency unconventional warfare exercise. It is a U.S. Special Operations Command sponsored exercise to improve Special Operation Forces unconventional warfare capability as part of the national security strategy. It will run from July 15th through September 15th this year. You will have the U.S. Army Special Forces Command, or Green Berets, the Navy SEALs, the U.S. Air Force Special Operations Command, the Marine Corps Special Operations Command, the Marine Corps Expeditionary Units, 82nd Airborne Division, and interagency partners. It labels Texas as a hostile area.
Yeah, we saw the map, and folks, I don't know whether you saw this. You can search for on the internet Jade Helm 2015, and you'll get many. You should get the at least the information, the basic information, and you'll see a map there.
It will be over 1,200 service members participating throughout Texas, to include the training unit, operational support personnel, and opposing force personnel, to anticipate minimal physical impact on given area due to the large area operations. It will increase military presence. You'll have increased aircraft in the area at night, noise complaints. Individuals may conduct suspicious activities designed to prepare them for complex environments overseas.
I could just hear the noise complaints calling, 911 saying, "Hey, can you stop those F-16s from flying over my house?"
Or the people walking around carrying weapons with blank ammo in them.
Yeah.
They say some will be wearing civilian attire in civilian vehicles, not being able to be identified
as
personnel of the drill, which is a concern to me, unless they're wearing some kind of indicator or marker.
So, since when has urban America and even suburban America, to the extent that we're seeing today, become the training ground for American military and assets like this? What are they gearing up for? Put this together with the pictures of the pregnant women and the children as targets and the desensitizing of our military, right? I mean, in the...
Yeah, and this is titled Jade Helm Martial Law World War III Prep Document.
Martial law thrown in there, too.
I don't know. Right? I downloaded it right from the site. There's a link on Drudge, took you to a site, and I downloaded it to Adobe, and that's the title on the top of Adobe. I didn't type that in.
Let me say something here. I just want to say, by the way, Gabe, thanks for your additional email. And again, respectful conversation. I appreciate that, and that's what we're having here. But here's, I was thinking about this today and preparing for the program, and got so enthralled in certain things, it failed to even update the website. But people are saying, well, gee whiz, I don't know if we're even going to have elections in 2016, and people talk about, the Shemitah and the blood moons and things happening perhaps in the fall of this year. And you notice how just there is a tide that's going toward this one world, new world order, right? Which is the old world order wrapped into the new one, or just the change of faces, same game book or playbook, same plan. Thinking today, what would it benefit the global elitists? What would for example, we did not have presidential elections in 2016. Would that really benefit the global elitists? I don't think so. Not at this point. Do I see then the United States having elections in 2016? At this point, I'm inclined to believe, I really think they will. And you know why? Because they own both sides. They own all sides. They own it all right now, and they are in earthly control, not control, but they're in the control of the powers right now of the earth. And also, what would garner the percentage of people right now who are awake but not active? Some type of an event like that. Look what happened at the Bundy Ranch when the standoff between the Bureau of Land Management and the Patriots there. Now, granted, you had a mix within that group of patriots, right? You had the people that were, you get them everywhere, the fringe of the fringe of the fringe, and then you have the core, for example, Oath Keepers and others. But I at this point, I'm looking at this and standing back trying to figure this out, praying, asking for wisdom and discernment. We've got how many months now to the election of November of 2016? We've got a year and a half left, right, of Obama. Things are going rather well, I would say, on schedule. Maybe a little bit behind schedule for the New World Order in total, but Obama is certainly pushing forward, and I believe is doing the bidding for the New World Order. So, if they own both sides of the next election, well, what legitimate purpose would it serve them to create an event to stop the election? I don't believe anything. So I'm looking more towards this very subtle takeover. What better way to tamp out freedom than subtly and from within. And that's what we see take place right now. So rather than this wearing a bike helmet around the house all the time, waiting for the piece of the sky to fall in, it's going to be more, in my view at least, it's going to be more like the walls closing in, and pretty soon you're going to be stuck and have nowhere to move. You won't be able to turn around. But it's going to happen in a gradual way, and you're not going to be able to see the walls necessarily closing in on you. But you can feel that happening now. I guess all I'm saying is, short of, and now it's very possible, on the other hand, that something would happen to create some sort of a national emergency. But I'm just stepping back and saying, okay, what would be if I were running things, and if I was devious, of course it would depend on my plans and how quickly I'd want to implement them. I think to me, I could see a more gradual encroachment, a more gradual progression of this implementation. But I also think, too, a lot of these people that are the globalists, that are the real power-hungry people behind this, they want to see much more accomplished in their lifetimes, and they're getting old. So, on the other hand, perhaps there could be something that would have the majority of the people, the population of the United States, saying, all right, we need martial law, we need troops in our streets, we need this. And I think they're beta testing this as well. Look at Ferguson. I think that's a big beta test. Look at everywhere. So things are happening, and they're accelerating. But I'm not ready yet to say, oh, boy, I don't know if we're going to have an election, because what are our choices? Look at our choices. Now, what would happen if a truly independent candidate would arise and garner grassroots support? I think that very possible. If that threatened the agenda and that person was not owned and part and parcel to the New World Order, I do believe that things could happen to absolutely create an event or a series of events that would change everything tomorrow. So I'm just tossing that out there. We're in a period here of, since there's relative calm and quiet, although certainly ask somebody in the Middle East, in Syria or in Tunisia or elsewhere, that wouldn't be the case. But here in the United States and in the West, generally speaking, there's relatively calm and quiet. We have the ability to sit back a moment and to evaluate, to do some mental triage. And this is what I'm seeing, at least today. And please understand, that could change tomorrow. That could change with some action, unintended or intended, with Ukraine or the Middle East, or even something happening here in the United States. Because we do believe, Joe and I do believe, and we've spoken on this, that there are ISIS members and Western-backed ISIS members here in the United States, ready, willing, and able, and planning on striking at iconic targets. So, and of course, look at the money. What Ted Burr said yesterday, the only place right now, according to Gerald Celente, the only way with debt, we're looking at war. So, where am I at? I just said a whole bunch of stuff, but what point did I make? Let's not get locked in on any one thing. Let's watch for everything, because I do believe whatever's going to happen, when it does happen, is going to come so far out of left field.
Yeah, I agree.
That we're not going to see it. We're never going to see it take. We're never going to expect it. It's kind of like being at that intersection, going through the intersection. You never see that car that broadsides you.
Or like we talk about 9/11, how eye-opening and what a surprise, that was. Of course, the intelligence community had the information. The president had the information, whatnot. But to the American people, it was an eye-opening event. I believe that they will do something that is not expected at all. And maybe it could be, subtlety, and then boom, something big. Maybe it could be quiet and then something big. But
yeah,
it's not going to be anything like we've ever seen before.
And it's going to be.
Ed Brewer said they need to get the people back on the rope, the chain that they so often put themselves over to, which is faith in politics, a political solution, an economic solution, a politician, a person, a ideology other than what we know the solution is.
Exactly. Luann, thanks for writing in. As she writes, and Joe, this is something you were talking about before the show, and we were going over before the show, and I thought it was so interesting. Luann, thank you very much for your email. Have you heard anything about mandatory voting? Okay, we were talking about this.
Apparently, the president has walked this back. I'm going to pull up this article where I saw
the renegade in chief.
Obama retreats from mandatory voting, push amid backlash. But let's go back to this article from earlier today. Obama promotes federal mandatory voter law. During a town hall meeting in Cleveland on Wednesday, President Obama promoted the idea of a federal mandatory voting law. It would be transformative if everyone voted, he said. That would counteract money more than anything. If everybody voted, then it would completely change the political map in this country. And I don't disagree with that. But should everybody vote? I mean,
man,
And I'm asking. I don't know. At this point, where people can be so deceived, or I mean, I was thinking about yesterday when we used to take trips out of town, and how I used to always listen to sports radio. And you weren't even.
Right.
I would say, you weren't even awake. We'll say. Nor was I back then.
Right.
So it's years and years ago, 10 years ago, 8
years and years to you, like yesterday for me.
But
folks, how that is.
You would say you'd like the political talk, and I haven't listened to this or even watched hardly any sports in years either now, and how much that I've changed from what I used to like or pay attention to or think was important then and now. And I was just thinking about that last night, but. It'd be like me back then. I had, people can't even name the vice. I guess if you couldn't pass a citizenship test.
Well, I'm not. You know what? I'll bet you.
People don't know who the president is, who the vice president
right.
is. People don't know what the laws are. People have been caught. Mark Dice goes around and does this.
Yep.
Petitions to lock up constitutionalists or throw away. I mean, just the most outrageous things that. Are against the very fabric of this country and our laws, and he gets people to sign them.
Yeah, but I think some of those are so twisted out there. I'd be more inclined to.
He's right when he says would it impact or would it change the amount of money, or would it enable people or make them want to engage in and just put them in the propaganda wheel?
Well, let me ask this question. Since Obama is supposedly a constitutional scholar, okay, now think about this, okay? What he said was, it would be transformative if everyone voted. That I agree with. I agree with you having that spirit, okay, of the duty to vote. Okay. Now, what he does say here, and this is interesting, he says that would counteract campaign money more than anything. If everyone voted, then it would completely change the political map of this country. Well, here's the thing. We don't elect our officials on the popular vote.
Well, exactly, but the popular vote is supposed to affect how the electoral votes.
Right. But if you just look at this comment at its face, to me it shows a... look, this comment could have been made off the cuff. I don't know. Obviously, mandatory voting would be a tool of tyrannical despots. Very plain and simple. You cannot force an entire population to vote. That's kind of like a third world nation status. But I mean, it certainly would be great if everyone was informed, and in a perfect world, wouldn't it be great if everyone was informed, everyone knew who was running, everyone knew who the president was, and they knew what day and time it was, and nobody was stoned on drugs and stoned on whatever what do they call that stuff, the mood enhancers or whatever. And the fluoride and all this. Wouldn't it be great if everyone had the ability, mental, intellectual ability to vote? Sure it would. But would it really change anything, given the fact that we have an electoral college in the case of a president? And then who are we voting for? What does it take to be a candidate? Listener, you out there, do you have really any chance of being even though your mom and dad might have said, you could be president one day, do you really think you've got a chance? Of course not. I mean, let's be sensible here. It would be nice if you did. And I'm sure that perhaps one day we can get back to that, where the farmer, back to where we were at the inception of this country, where farmers but even back then there were some issues. But even then, but mandatory voting. But what you were saying, Joe, I would contend that the majority of people today walking down the road don't even know who their representative is. Congressional representative, don't know what district they're in. I would say that if you would hand, you Joe said studies 8th grade history and 8th grade the equivalent of social studies today. 8th grade tests back from the 1800s. Most people would fail them today,
including us.
Perhaps. Yeah, I'm not even sure I could pass. Or even a citizenship test. A lot of people would not be able to pass.
I actually took one the other day, and I did real well. Surprisingly.
Define real well.
I got I only out of 35 questions or 45, I got 2 wrong. I think it was 35.
That's pretty good.
They weren't that hard, but it was not common knowledge to most people, apparently.
Well, see, and that's the thing. And wow. I'm looking at this mandatory voting comment as at worst, or at the very least, I should say, I don't even know how to phrase that, but kind of an off-the-cuff comment that perhaps is contextually stretched, and if not that, then almost like a beta test, especially steeped in the semantics, where certain verbiage could be used to define a political environment in which we don't exist. It's kind of redefining the Constitution, as this group has redefined many things, not just the Constitution, but redefined marriage, redefined morality in general, redefined our environment. So that's kind of the way I look at this.
Let's take a break and let's take calls on the other side. We are at the top of the hour, just past the top of the hour. So we will take our break now. We'll be right back after these short commercial messages. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Thursday, March 19th. I almost said January. March 19th, 2015.
The Hagmann Hagmann Report on this, the 19th day of March 2015. It's hard to believe that March is more than halfway over, and a third of the year 2015 is halfway over. And boy, that's sand through the hourglass. Doesn't that fly through the older you get? Or at least that's the way it seems, doesn't it? Perhaps our time is going quickly. I just want to say thank you to everyone. I've been delayed in responding to cards and letters and to emails and for cause. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes here, and just a lot of things going on behind the scenes. We're working toward the creation an actual physical. Actually, we're going to be moving the studio. We're about 99.9% sure. We should have everything finished or have all the paperwork done at the end of this month, and then sometime next month, the beginning part of next month, we'll be in a new studio, and that will give us more options, much bigger, and it's because of your help. And I'll be flat out honest with you. I mean, we've scrimped, saved, and even despite that, of course, we had to mortgage ourselves. But having said that, we're preparing for a time when we might not be able to chat like this, or at least not in this manner, in this venue. And we have to think ahead. We have to think 2 and 3 and 4 steps ahead. Not panic, but prepare. And that's what we're doing. So when I said I should tell you what I did today, it's interesting because there was just one clerical error made on a mortgage paper. We didn't make it. The whoever puts these papers together made it, and that one clerical error generated the necessity of me having to sign 14 pages of corrections, acknowledging the error and then acknowledging the correction. And the individual I'm working with at the company where we're doing this, the broker, if you will, or the banker, I suppose, and she knows how I feel about the bankers, but she said, for example, if you buy a house, I'll just use that as an example. If you buy a house, the credit market, for example, for houses is really getting much tighter. Gone are the no-doc loans, or at least for non-politicians. And I had said some things earlier this month when I had a conversation with her about what we were going to be doing, and I had said some things about the Federal Reserve and about central banks and about Bernanke. And so after sending me or saying, hey, I've got some documents that you got to sign, I walked in there today and she said, did you hear, or she said, I thought of you yesterday, because she was gone at a conference, a seminar. And based on how things are changing, I think she must go to seminars every other day. But anyway, she said, I thought of you yesterday. Momentarily, I thought, boy, that's not necessarily good when someone thinks. Anyway, she said, did you hear Ben Bernanke, through his own regulations, in part because of his own regulations, was having a hard time or could not get a refinanced mortgage on his house in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that was not too long ago.
Yeah, and I said, I didn't hear about that, and it's because of some of the tighter regulations where he was a Fed chairman, and then he went into some other, wherever he's at now, but he wasn't at his job long enough to qualify for a refi. Okay, on his home, and that's a home, and it's much different than what we're doing. So, but oh my goodness, I thought it couldn't have happened to a nicer person. I mean, and that's a bad thing to think, I suppose. But it's just there is nothing that's simple anymore. For whether it's buying a car, buying a house, buying a studio or property in a studio, or whatever, or applying for and receiving insurance. It's now. Not only is it not fun, but it's regulated, it's centralized, and we're seeing this oppression, this tyranny that's taking place. Pretty soon, maybe in 10 years, I don't know. Maybe in 10 years, you'll have to get government approval here in the United States it's essentially you do now, but you know what I mean. It'll be more overt, more oppressive. Joe, go ahead, sir.
Let's go to the phones. We got a bunch of callers on hold. We're going to go to those who have been on hold the longest. We're going to go to area code 360 first. 360, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. How's it going tonight?
Good.
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. You're on the air.
It's great. All right. It's an honor to talk to you both again. I actually wanted to make a comment or two about something the Lord helped me understand recently that'll, I think, maybe be a little bit of spiritual and physical preparation help for people, and it's related to a couple of guests you had recently. One was Rebecca Roth.
Yes.
I think that was back in January. And then another, I think it might have been on a weekend, Mike Hoddard, who's somebody I've been listening to a long time, Pastor Mike.
Right.
Anyway, he's inspired me to kind of dig into the Bible and look at different numbers and the meanings of numbers and counting things in the Scripture. And Rebecca mentioned a very interesting number, in her interview the number of firefighters that had died in the two Twin Towers.
Yep.
And then
I know where you're headed.
I wanted
Go
to
ahead.
make sure I
Go
heard
ahead.
her correctly. Yeah, okay. Good. Okay. I don't know how, but let's see. Maybe you do. Anyway, I wanted to make sure about that number. So it's a very special number, and she confirmed it by email. And then, actually, interestingly, just a couple of weeks ago, I heard Rudy Giuliani's speech, and he had mentioned that same number again. And anyway, I started digging around, counting things in the Bible. I decided to count up the number of words spoken by God in Genesis 1 in the creation account. And that happens to be the same number as the number of firefighters that died that day. And I don't know, do you remember the number? What that was? Just testing your memory.
Hold on a minute here. No. I know that.
I'll tell you what it's.
Go ahead.
Yes. If you think about the scripture and the use of numbers in the Bible, and what number maybe comes to mind as the most significant, meaningful number in the Bible?
In what context?
From Genesis to Revelation. Just the first number that comes to your mind as far as often repeated.
770.
Very significant.
Yeah, I mean, you got 777.
Exactly.
7. Right. Is that? Are we?
Yeah,
are we
and in fact, I don't know. Yes, you're on the same page. I don't know that you can find anywhere in Scripture where it'll show 777 together. I mean, unless you include Revelation, you've got the 7 judgments repeated 3 times and that type of thing. But in Genesis chapter 1, if you count just the words spoken by God, you end up with a number that is exactly 7 times 7 times 7, and that is 343.
Right.
And so that kind of jumped off the radio when I was, I guess I was listening on my MP3, but that was something I just found just not long before she had that interview. And what's particularly interesting is that I took the time to look at that number count in a lot of other versions, like about 11 other most popular versions, and none of them have that number except the KJV. And that is just one example of something like that in the King James that's not true in the other versions of the Bible.
What was that number again? 343, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
343. It's 7
right.
times 7. It's 7 to the third power, 7
Correct.
Cubed, however you want to look at it.
Right.
Yeah. And a more amazing one that's it's so far beyond coincidence that I think it's very convincing is the theme in 4 different passages in Genesis that start in Genesis 2 with the creation of Eve, and then Genesis 3 is the fall of mankind, and then Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel.
Okay.
Those are 3 that Mike Hoggart had mentioned. Yeah, and then I found a 4th one that ties in with it in Genesis 32, which is the story of Jacob wrestling with God. And anyway, if you look through, count the words, count only the words spoken by Adam in chapter 2, count only the words spoken by the serpent in chapter 3, and in chapter 11, Tower of Babel, count only the words spoken by the people, and then in chapter 32, count only the words spoken by God. It's exactly the same number each time.
That's interesting.
And that's true only in the King James.
Did you do this research, or are you the author of this research, or is it someone else's?
Some. Yeah, I was inspired by Mike Hoggard. He's the one that did chapter 2, 3, and 11, and I found the one in chapter 2.
Right. Okay.
And I'm not done yet. What's amazing is the number is actually related to the theme in those 4 passages.
How so?
And I'll tell you, if you think about the theme of each one, chapter 2 is the creation, the completion of mankind. Chapter 3 is the fall of mankind. Chapter 11 is mankind's rebellious effort to reach unto heaven on their own. And then chapter 32 is the solution for mankind. So it's obvious, what the theme is in all 4 of those, which is humanity, right? It's mankind.
Well, okay.
And the number in all 4 of those is the number 46. And that is a unique number. That is a number specific to humanity because of our 23 pairs of chromosomes. And if you look, that actually occurs elsewhere in Scripture. If you type into your search engine on a Bible search software and you type in the 2 words body and temple, you'll only get 2 verses in the whole Bible. One of them is in the 46th book of the Bible, and then the other is John chapter 2, and that's where Jesus says, destroy this temple, I'll raise it up in 3 days. Remember what the Pharisees said, the Jews said to him?
Right, okay.
They said 40 and 6 years was this temple in building, and wilt thou rear it up in 3 days? And this he spake of the temple of his body. So both occurrences are 46. If you look at the Temple of Solomon in the Old Testament, had 2 pillars in the front of it. Each pillar was 23 cubits tall. If you look at the New Testament tabernacle in the wilderness, it had 46 boards surrounding it. The humanity, or the seed in the Word of God, is related to, it's used as a metaphor for offspring, human offspring, the seed, like the seed of Abraham. And then it's also used as a metaphor for the Word of God, and the Word of God in the 2 original languages is made of 46 letters, which is 22 in Hebrew and 24 in Greek. So anyway, you see that theme throughout the whole Bible, and so I guess it's not surprising that you would see in the King James, in those 4 chapters in Genesis, you would see that number in each one of those. And actually, it tells the whole redemption story.
You mentioned 46, correct? You mentioned that number. Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Or okay.
23 pairs of chromosomes. Yeah.
Right, and folks, if you're not familiar with this, there is a theory out there, and a lot of people just call it kooky conspiracy, but there's a theory that Shakespeare helped translate some of the portions of the King James version of the Bible. And, look, I don't know if he was fluent in Hebrew or what languages, but of course, there's the Francis Bacon theory about Shakespeare, where Shakespeare did not actually write his own works, and that focuses on the premise that he is Francis Bacon actually wrote the Shakespearean works. But it's interesting because when you look at the number 46 in the Bible, when the King James version, or when the King James translation teams were working on the translations, Shakespeare was 46 years old, and supposedly he personally translated Psalm 46, and the 46th word of Psalm 46 is shake, I mean, boy, you can go on and on and on and on, and where do you stop? Okay.
Do you remember Obama a few years ago recited Psalm 46 in the news? I think it was on 9/11 anniversary.
Exactly.
Remember that?
Yes. Yep.
I was listening to another program on the radio, actually national, but local here too, and they were getting calls from people, and people were saying how creeped out they were by Obama reading that, particularly 10, which says, "Be still and know that I am God."
Yeah,
and you can you can see why that would creep people out a little bit.
Yeah, very interesting. And numerology in the Bible is fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if I didn't know all that about Shakespeare and that history there. That's very fascinating.
Yeah, you got to kind of go off the grid. Go ahead, sir. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then I mentioned I was going to say something about physical preparation. The best thing I've learned, and I think things like what I just shared are good spiritual preparation. They actually, I think one of the things about it is it proves, the perfection and sufficiency of the Bible.
Right.
I think that the whole DNA, tampering issue is very much related to end times prophecy. What's going with the tampering with the human genome.
100%.
And so I think God, would build this into the Scriptures so that we could see. God already knew about it. I mean, in fact, this has been going on since Genesis chapter 6, right, where the human, all of God's creation, I think, was tampered with genetically. And so we're just referring again to the days of Noah that way. And I think it's good to know that God built those kind of things into the Scriptures.
Every day that I read the Scriptures in the Bible, I'm going to just say this: every day that I look at the Bible and open the Bible, read the Scriptures, I find it to be a marvelous inspiration and perfect in every way. From the numerology, and numerology is part of it, but just a divine way that you could not have created. I mean, it's like the perfect creation of it's fantastic. So it's the inherent Word of God.
It's self-validating.
That's right.
Yep.
It is.
It validates itself. Anyway, one thing I was going to tell you about too, just in terms of physical preparation. Best thing I've learned in a long time about prepping is a book I read recently about growing food God's way, which is like a grace-based way to grow food. It's a very simple way to not have to weed very much or water or fertilize, not have to till the ground. And it produces better results. And it's interesting that it's just not something very well known. It's starting to be. There's a pretty famous gardener up in the state of Washington that the book is written about. It's basically a biography of him and his life and how he, raised his whole family, supported his whole family just off of his, one of his acres that he lives on. And anyway, I highly recommend people check that out. You can
name of the book again?
Read about how to growing food God's way.
Okay.
And I think that's the same as a website. Yeah, and it's just about covering the ground. You cover it like with wood chips or whatever covering, as opposed to tilling.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thanks for the call. So we're going to have to move on.
Yep.
We appreciate the info.
Thank you. God bless you, my friend.
But you have a good night. Take care.
Yep. Thank you.
And that reminds me, Joe, we got to get Rebecca Roth back on. I thought that was a fantastic interview. It's still up on SoundCloud. Of course, it's still up on BTR, the archive. If you haven't caught that, pretty engaging and enlightening interview with Rebecca Roth.
Absolutely.
That was a powerful interview. I think that was one of the most powerful interviews she's done on alternative media. At least that's my view. Listen to the end, and you tell me if that didn't move you. Knock your socks right off, make them roll up and down. Right?
All right, let's go to area code 805. 805, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. 805.
805. All right.
All right, we're going to go to area code 210. 210, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hi.
210. Good evening.
Can you hear me fine?
Absolutely, yep.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah, 5 by 5. Go ahead, sir.
Can you hear me fine?
Okay.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Let's see. I was not going to do a video about the new Super Bowl, but I was watching it the other day, and I realized that they're counting backwards seconds, and they have a timeline of the tribulation in it, kind of like my video that I did about Lady Gaga and her video Bad Romance. And the Bad Romance is a bad romance between monotheism and polytheism. And anyway, in Gaga's video, her song is exactly 284 seconds long.
Okay.
At 222nd point, she all the dancers switch from white to red, white horse, red horse, and she starts singing French, also referring to the French Revolution or the red horse, which is pieces taken from the earth, and anyway, 220 and 284 are Illuminati numbers. If you look at Fritz Springmeier's book, you'll find the numbers in his book. They're, forgot what they're called, but you just type those two numbers into Google and you'll figure out. It's a mathematical deal. So anyway, it's a biblical number too, because 2520 minus the 2300 evening mornings. There's two words there in Daniel 8:13. Evening, mornings. Okay, so they correctly translated as days. I don't have any problem with the translation, but keep in mind there's two words there. So anyway, 2500 minus 2300 is 220. So that's the difference in time between the first and the second trumpet horse. And what we have in the new Super Bowl is, and I'm doing the video right now, I'm going to put it up in the morning, is they have the thing counting backwards. Yeager's video counts forward, and I have that video. Anybody can watch it right now online. But in the Super Bowl, they're counting backwards. And so I actually include Yeager's video backwards in the Super Bowl as I'm doing the video right now, or my computer's collating or whatever you call it. So, yeah, they have the entire timeline of the tribulation starting with February 1st. Again, when, I'm actually telling myself again, it was a hard lesson learned. They are not pointing to years because they don't know the year.
Well,
they're pointing to days of a year they don't know.
Okay. All right.
So what they're counting down from February 1st, and the number of seconds counts events along the tribulation as the Super Bowl video going backwards. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'll tell you what, why don't you do this? Since you're doing a YouTube video, why don't you do this? Why don't you go ahead and complete that and send us a link to the video via email. Go to hagmannhagmann.com, put in the subject line Super Bowl video, and then put in the link to the video. Let us take a look at it, and we'll have you on and comment on that if appropriate. And I think it might be, given the fact that you're looking at this numerically. numerology-wise, and once that way, people will have a source to go to, and they can look at it and go from there. How's that sound?
That sounds great. My YouTube. I'm never very successful at putting up copyrighted material on YouTube, so I'm actually putting it on my website, doubleuntouher.com.
What was that website again?
Anyway,
I didn't get it.
Double Unto Her.
Double Unto Her. Okay. Give us a chance to take a look at the website. Send us an email, and we'll email you back, and we'll arrange a call back, and we'll go from there. So, all right, brother.
And
thank
you can go ahead and you can go ahead and check out the Giga video. It's already up there on the 4th page.
Okay. All right. Will do. It's good. Yeah, you're getting really choppy, so it's a little difficult to understand you. But thank you. We'll check it out, and we'll look for your email. Thank you for the call. DoubleUntoHer.
All right, boy.
All right, man. All right, very good. Let's move on.
248. We're coming to you next. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Hey, Doug, Joe.
Hey. Yes.
How's it going, guys?
Very well. Very well. What's on your mind?
Oh, I was just enjoying the show, listening to it, and I got in the queue. I hit 1. I didn't think I'd get on here.
So it was a premature number punch there, huh?
No, you know what? These phone companies only give you so much data.
Yeah.
And I just realized the other day that I could listen to it on the phone instead of burning up the data.
That's true. Yeah, you can. You can call in and do that. Well, I'll tell you what. If you accidentally hit 1, we can move along, and you can go ahead and continue listening, unless you've got something that you want to contribute. We'll just put you back on hold and come on.
Yeah, you could do that. That's fine. I'm
right.
just kind of nodding out, you guys.
All right, brother. Well,
hey,
thanks, man. Yeah.
Great show, fellas.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate that. All right.
Yeah.
Have a
you
good
guys
night.
take it easy, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
You too.
Yeah. This numbering system, or this way that is currently we have right now, is kind of causing problems. So you have to bear with us.
All right. Let's go to area code 731 next. 731. We're coming to you now. You're live on the show.
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Well, we can.
All right. I think I called you guys the other night.
Trucker,
I was in Chicago the other night. I'm in Minnesota tonight, and I wonder what your thoughts are on. I read something about Iran possibly attacking Israel if Netanyahu gets elected. You believe that's a possibility?
Man, I'll tell you, Vegas odds, right? You're looking at a complex situation. I don't know who's going to be the first to pull the trigger over there. You know what? I think right now if Iran would do anything, I think they would be shooting themselves in the foot, because what better ally could Iran have right now than Obama and company, Jarrett Obama and company? Now, I would be more concerned perhaps with Israel doing something preemptively, but I'm probably thinking more by proxy. So in other words, you might see something, you might see a flashpoint over there, and it being blamed on my goodness, even perhaps ISIS or some other group.
Right.
But I think that's more of a possibility, because really, what would Israel stand to benefit by attacking Iran at this moment? Or Iran attacking Israel at this moment, given the friendly nature of relations, seemingly, or at least being telegraphed in the mainstream media.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. I thought possibly they were, the comments came out prior to the election, and I thought maybe they were trying to sway Herzog into getting it, through fear.
Right.
You know, and you know, those people are afraid of war, and it's possible that they could have swayed the vote a little bit through threats. You know, people don't want war over there, and you know, I just thought of maybe it was some sort of ploy like that, but then you never know with Iran. I mean, they believe their savior is going to come through nuclear war, so, you know.
That's right.
And you never know when they're going to push that button, you know.
Well, yeah, and I think that there are a number of people that have made a good case that Iran is already nuclear armed, and you know, I don't know. I mean, how can we know with any degree of certainty? But I do believe that Iran does want to cause the chaos necessary to bring in their Imam Mahdi, and of course they'll do anything in their power to do that. On the other hand, they're not stupid either. They're you know, you do have politics in ideology. You know, look,
right.
I would be more. I'd be looking in the other direction, only because of the sentiments of the United States and the U.S. kind of failing to back Israel. But that's just my view at this point.
Yeah. Well, your comments on voting, and I've never heard anybody actually say you can't become president, but I've always felt that, you know, unless you're willing to sign over to the devil's camp, I don't believe you can become president. And you know, I've never heard anybody actually say that, though. And
well, I mean, that's just my personal belief, because I mean, I don't believe that the average person out there, you know, like you as a trucker or me as just a normal guy, we don't have the juice. And by the juice, I'm saying the people in our, you know, the funding. I mean, look at how much is being spent to have to become a candidate. I mean, it's insane. And what was that quote by Eisenhower? Eisenhower made a quote about you have to either be insane or I don't recall the quote, but it was a very salient point he made. But yeah, I mean, let's be realistic, okay? I mean, really, money is
right.
Yeah. Well, Donald Trump. You know, I mean, hey. But then again, who knows, man? Yeah.
I did not vote the last time, and you know, my feelings are, and I think a lot of people's are, you know, I'm not going to vote. I'm a registered voter. I'm just not going to vote unless I'm given a choice. I mean, you got what are our choices here? I got this bad guy on the right or this bad guy on the left. You know, those are my choices.
Yep.
And as long as I have no choice, I'm not going to vote.
Well, and both choices are controlled by the same party, the royal party, if you will, or the party of the Illuminists, the Luciferians. So you're in the and I understand that. Why vote for the lesser of two evils? You're still voting for evil. Now,
exactly.
And I don't want to seem like I'm double talking here because if there was a third party candidate that represented the good of the people and the Constitution of the United States, I certainly would put my vote behind him. But then how many people have said, well, I'm not going to vote for how many conservatives do you know who having had the chance to vote for like a Rand Paul or a Ron Paul or name a third party candidate viable in the primaries of a presidential election that didn't vote at all, or didn't vote for that person because they're convinced that that's a vote for the opposition or the liberal or Marxist party. Well, that kind of thinking to me is counterproductive. That if you've got a third party candidate, and all you have to do is go back to the Teddy Roosevelt, Woodrow Wilson, and conservatives will take you back there. Certain conservatives will take you back there saying, well, the Bull Moose Party locked in the election for Woodrow Wilson, I believe it was.
Right.
You know, look, we need to vote our conscience. We need to vote our heart. We need to vote, or spiritually and biblically and be sound. And we need to follow. But we also have to realize that we're playing within a skewed set of rules, and the games are rigged. So
it is. All right. Well, there you have it.
Well, Trucker, my friend, out there in where are you at in Missouri? Minnesota
tonight, and I'll be in Illinois tomorrow.
Wow.
So I'm all over the place. You never know where you're going to hear from me at. So, I'm out here.
How are the roads?
All right, I appreciate that.
I just want to know, the roads okay for you, buddy?
Yeah, they are. They're good. They're not bad. The weather's lightening up, and so up here anyway. I mean, I know it's raining pretty good down south, so yeah, everything's good.
All right, you just be careful.
All right, I appreciate you guys, and God bless you.
Well, God bless you, and we want to keep you company on your next your next well, at this point, I guess, next 15 miles anyway. God bless, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Have a good night. All right, let's go to area code 516 next. We're coming to you now. 516, you're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report.
Well, hey, Joe and Doug. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Dave.
Dave from Long Island again.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, hey, I just want to give a real shout out there. Thank you, Israel. I got a few things written down here now. I feel a little better to this election, and I just want to say, in hearing this guy talk about two-state solution, I just want to give a shout out to Israel for voting for Netanyahu. Definitely God is behind him, and it's a good thing that you got this guy. Too bad we didn't do a good choice like this too. But thanks for slapping him in the face. We don't have any Republicans here that could slap Obama in the face, but at least you people in Israel slapped Obama in the face, and thank God for that. Now, a two-state solution, like Pastor Bagley said, a two-state solution? What? What? Are you serious? A two-state solution? Where the hell on this earth can you find where Muslims are living next to Christians? Where is their peace? I mean, I'm looking at something here. Italy, Muslims destroying urine on Virgin Mary statue. Spain, violent Muslims screaming Allah Akbar. All you Christians will die. Gets arrested. Nigeria, Boko Haram, top dog says, we killed the people of Baga. We indeed killed them, as our Lord instructed us in his book, the book of crap. The Quran is an evil, demonic book of crap. All right? Thank you very much for saying this. Tomorrow is my birthday. I thank the Lord. I'm in my 60s, and I thank God I don't have to live. I lived in a time that I know you're up there, Doug, maybe not as old as me, but we were in so much better times. Even though the Vietnam War was going on, it was such a better time. You know what I mean?
Interesting you brought the Vietnam War up, because we don't have enough time to get into it, but interesting you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, these
different
people,
times.
No matter where. Let me ask this question to you people out there, you stupid freaking Kool-Aid drinkers. Where in Africa, these people are being slain, the black Christians. Well, they don't even know where freaking Israel is. Why are they killing them? Why are they killing them, man? Wake up. And you homosexuals out there, you're on the left. You're going to go with the Muslims? After they get us, man, they're going to come and throw you people off the roofs, man. Are you serious?
Yeah, Dave, have you taken your blood pressure meds today?
Yeah, well, don't worry. If I die, I die. I go straight to the Lord. Hey, I don't have to worry about any, maybe it's better to die for the Lord. I don't know. But to you military and law enforcement, just remember this. Just remember right here, you guys are expendable. And
cannon fodder, actually.
What?
They're cannon fodder for the games that the military.
Yeah.
Joe
I heard Alex Strong saying that, like you said about Texas and that. I mean, he would get rid of the military and put in, who would he put in? Let me see. Farrakhan and his army, the Black Panthers, the Muslim Brotherhood. You think that he's going to keep you people, you Christians, that are going to do the work of this demonic being? Are you serious? I mean, look what he did. Look at Brian Terry, the border agent. Fast and Furious. Dead. All right? What about the 22 Navy SEALs that were put on one Chinook helicopter? Did you see Obama come out and say, I want to find out who put 22 Navy SEALs, or whatever the amount was, on one fat Chinook helicopter? Did we see any tears from Obama crying like he did at Newtown in Connecticut? Huh? Well,
hey, Dave. Let me ask you a question. And no, that's fine. That's fine. You're doing okay. You're coloring within the lines there. That's fine. Let me ask you and the listeners a question, and I want everyone to. We're coming close to the end of the show, and we're going to have to get another caller or two in here. But let me ask you and other callers or other listeners. Think back to 1995, 96, 97, in that time period, just as an arbitrary period of time, pre-9/11. Would we be having this conversation about the formation of a caliphate in the Middle East, ISIS, the beheading of Coptic Christians, the terrorist attacks all over the place? What happened to change everything? Just throwing that out there. Think of the environment before 9/11. Think of it afterwards, and who really has essentially won this war, or is winning this war? Just think about that. Go ahead, sir.
The last thing I want to say, I don't know if anybody captured what the two Egyptian men did with a dog over there. I don't know if it's still on YouTube. I don't know what side I've seen it on, but you saw a dog. And it was an Egyptian, not ISIS, regular Egyptian kids. Did you see that, though?
Yeah, I don't want to talk about that, but yeah.
Oh, well, let the people know. Let the people know what these savages are doing. They had please let me say it. They had this dog there. They had it chained from the front to the back, however they had it, but it was loose a little. And one Muslim bastard is in the front with a knife, and the other guy's in the back of the dog. They were pussies because they didn't want the dog to bite him. The dog wanted to bite him, but he could only go so far. And he was slashed in the face, and the dog's getting mad, and the other guy's behind. Finally, you see the dog on the ground. It lost blood, I guess, and you see it on the ground. These are savages, man, and they weren't ISIS. I mean, come on, man. This is crazy. I mean, everywhere in that holy book, their holy book, I crap on it. Everywhere on that freaking book. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, I know. Look, it's maddening. It really is. And Dave, God bless you, my friend, for being so passionate. We're going to get a couple of callers.
Anybody going over there to kill any ISIS? I volunteer. I'll be 63 tomorrow. I give my life to go over there and kill some of those ISIS bastards. God bless everybody.
God bless you. Happy birthday, all right? And happy birthday. And
God bless you. You stay safe.
All right. Wow. Yeah, it was just horrible. Things that are going on.
All right. Area code 404. We're coming to you. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm a new listener. I think I first found you on YouTube, and then I said, oh, yeah, I know Blog Talk. So I had to find your number. I had a question. I wanted to know, I have a family of 3, and I wanted to know if I was to be able to leave the U.S., where should I go?
Well, why would you want to leave the U.S.? Let me just ask that question because that would tell me a lot.
I don't feel safe here. Every 2 months I'm getting a ticket. I can't imagine what life is going to be once martial law hits.
Well, here's the thing: you can go to a westernized. Look, to answer that question, we'd have to really know a lot about you. Personally, ma'am, here's my theory, and you could take it or leave it. I don't believe that we're going to outrun what's coming. Okay, so I don't believe that like going to, we'll say, another country is going to save you. You're going to just be presented with a different set of problems. If you're born and raised in this country, at least you have the benefit of home field advantage, if that's what you want to call it. Now, if you're looking for other countries, I know Panama, some places in central Costa Rica, there are a lot of expats there. I've known people who have gone to Canada, but Costa Rica and Panama, 2 countries that come to mind right away. However, to me, with all due respect, I don't think you're going to outrun what's coming or get away from what's coming. That's just my view, because I think it's going to be worldwide. Can you slow it down? I don't know.
And there was a video Peter shifted on how expensive it was to expatriate yourself from the United States.
Yeah.
But if money's not an issue, that's different. But they're making it tough, and if it's going to happen everywhere, and maybe not right away.
Do you feel strongly? I mean, have you taken it to prayer? Where do you feel strongly that God has said, "Hey, get out of the United States"?
Well, I want to say this, that I always felt that I was protected. So just saying that, I feel like no matter where I'll be okay. But then also just being a mother, a minority supposedly, it's just, do I lock myself in my house? I mean, do I? It's just, I'm not sure.
Well,
I'm not really sure.
No, you make a good point, though. You can't live life normally by locking yourself in the house. I wouldn't want to live in that existence, although sometimes I feel like doing it. Okay, locking myself, but you still have to live. So, the only, ma'am, really, I would urge a couple of things. I would urge you to just put it to prayer, really consider your options, and look at where you are now. You said you're a minority. Do you have family in another country or extended family elsewhere?
Well, I do have some other connections where I could meet with other family members of people that I know. But I guess it's my gypsy, mind that thinks I can go anywhere. I believe in culture. I'm from New York, so to be around people, I miss being around different cultures, but I'm in the South, so there's not really much selection here. It's very little, selection. But I have small children now, so it's not just me. I'm more so thinking of the safety of my children. So that's where I am on that.
Wow. Yeah, I truly believe that if God leads you to some place, I mean, if you seek, and this is, I don't want this to sound like a cop-out, because it's not. I believe that those, I think God would tell you, if you pray in earnest, I think God will tell you what you should do. Now, second to that would be the practical steps. I believe the United States still offers the ability to insulate yourself from what's coming if you take steps where you're at, or anywhere within the United States if you have that inclination, as you mentioned, like a gypsy. Dare to Prepare is a good book because it offers advice on different climates, different areas of the world.
Prudent Places also.
Prudent Places, USA, from Holly Deo, from standeo.com, Holly Deo's works. But all of this, I just want, in a larger sense, ma'am, I just have to say that I don't believe whatever's coming. I don't believe we're all going to escape it. So the best we can do is hope for is to pray and to
And one quick point, I used to have prophetic dreams, and I had a dream where I was leading people. So, yes, I know my faith is strong. Yes, I do believe that I'll have a prominent role. But now that I'm a mother, it's like, I guess they'll just be by my side. So it doesn't really matter, I guess.
No, it does matter. It matters to you and to all of us. But, look, I'm sorry, we're at the end of our show, but I'll just say this. If you want to talk to like-minded people, and we don't promote this enough, but if you want to talk to like-minded people and some who feel like they want to expatriate, HH Connections at Start Mail is a good place to go. That's one recommendation, but keep listening. I'm sorry, we're at the end of our show, and I hate to end like this, but please keep listening, and I just want to say thank you for your call, but we're out of time. I can't do anything more than that. God bless you. Thank you so much for your call.
Thank you so much.
All right, folks, that'll do it for us tonight. Until tomorrow, stay safe. God bless, Have a great night.